Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to bring you a PLE reactions video, this time for NXT's The Great American Bash. Per usual, we'll go through every single match that took place, give you our thoughts and review on each one, and then give you our thoughts and review on the entire card as a whole. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the opening contest of the evening, which was Naraku going up against Tony D'Angelo for the NXT Championship. KP, how'd you rate this one?
Yeah, not gonna lie, I was particularly surprised when I saw this match was going to be opening the show. I was a little bit taken aback by that. Wasn't really too sure what to expect because going into this, I thought, okay, well, this is a good opportunity here to really just whack some momentum upon Naraku, and just keep that ball moving. He's done well since he's arrived. Obviously, he's been sort of a thorn in the side of Tony D'Angelo, and you can see the battle scars literally going into this matchup from Tony D. Obviously, just bearing the bandages all over his face and covering that eye. So naturally speaking, here, the champion is fighting with one eye. This is going to be difficult for him, right? Turns out it's actually a very even match. The bandage affects him in parts, sure. There are definitely references to it, but honestly, for the most part, it's pretty just much a non-factor. Tony D comes out the gates very, very strong here to start off this contest. The axe is supposed to ringside immediately, and then we do see a spear from Tony D'Angelo, which sends Naraku through through the wall on the outside of the ring. That's just underneath the crow's nest. So they sort of like go crashing through there. And yeah, after that, it's a pretty even matchup for the majority. Sure, both men have their spells of being in the control, and I guess you could maybe slightly favor Naraku as having slightly more offense here and there, but it's quite a physical affair, and it stays that for the entire match. To be fair, lots of heavy hitting offense, and it does go to ringside a numerous amount of times. But yeah, it's like Naraku goes for this dirty advantage on the odd occasion here, trying to scrape at the eye and whatever, and take advantage of that, but it doesn't really get him anywhere because he doesn't actually win this matchup. Tony D retains the NXT Championship here. That comes in way of Naraku hitting a German suplex towards the very ending stages, and as he hits that, Tony D just basically just powers through it, sort of like a momentum, if you will, just spurring him on, adrenaline, if you will, and that then allows him to basically just go straight after Naraku, hitting his dead to rights, which is a spinebuster maneuver, and that would be the 1-2-3 to retain his NXT Championship. Like, I don't particularly like the way they did this matchup. I do think that it makes Naraku, who's someone who had a lot of momentum going into this, sort of seemingly just be completely wiped away with it. So all that sort of momentum is now just completely dissipated, because he's basically fought somebody with one eye and lost. And it hasn't even been like the guy with the one eye just somehow snatched a victory out of nothing. I got nothing against Tony D. I like the guy. I really, really do. I think he deserves to be the NXT champion. But just the creative decision to have them do this on Tuesday's NXT, the whole eye thing, and then for them to essentially just not matter at all when it comes down to the big match. I just feel it's a weird decision. It really, really is for me. Maybe I'm missing something. Nick, I'd love to hear what you're thinking about that. Whether you agree with what I'm saying here, whether you do think that there is actually some logic in there somewhere that I may be over skipping and not seeing. But yeah, in terms of the matchup itself, I thought this one was all right. It was an okay start, but just seemingly was a little flawed to me and didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And honestly, just could have been a bit better from what I expected from the two men. I gave it a 7 out of 10. So it's not bad, but it's nothing spectacular or great either. What do you reckon, though, Nick? Overall thoughts on obviously what I've asked, and yeah, what were your overall of the match rating and quality? How do you think this one kicked off the show?
Yeah, I was left kind of wondering a lot of the same things. Obviously, out of the gates, Tony is looking for revenge here, so he is attacking Naraku. And so that part I was okay with. Like, obviously, he knows he's going to be at a disadvantage, or at least should be, because he's only able to see out of one eye. So that whole portion made sense to me. But as you mentioned and alluded to, it didn't really stop there. It just kind of, the momentum was pretty even. You could argue. I would argue actually it felt like it was more in Tony D's favor. So and for the match itself, though, it was hard hitting, fast paced. For me, the biggest issues were outside of what you already mentioned was it felt like it just was a bit short and kind of lacked the physicality that one would expect. Obviously, I had it there from the beginning of the match, but then after that, it just felt like a pretty standard match. It didn't feel like, it should have been as much bad blood as there was. So, there should have been more. I mean, so. Unfortunately I felt like Naraku was made to look a bit weak here. Um, couldn't capitalize on that at all. Had just turned evil, if you will, and didn't really capitalize it on all at all. So yeah, it does feel like a bit of a momentum buster there. Um, yeah, good match, you know, but specifically, I just feel like Naraku should have been taking more advantage of the state of Tony D'Angelo, and I similar kind of process to you. I just felt like he shouldn't have been able to win that so easily, or it didn't really come into play as much as it should have. So that was a big glaring issue for me, and I think it probably should have took him a bit more time if he was going to somehow win, a bit more time and not be able to dish out quite as much offense. But yeah, I just kind of felt like a non-factor, which is a strange decision. So unfortunately, that glaring hole kind of did affect my rating. I gave it a 6 out of 10. The next match of the evening has Tatum Paxley going up against Zaria, once again trying to obtain uh, Women's NXT North American Championship. KB, what do you make of this rendition of Zaria versus Tatum?
I think if there's one thing that we've learned about the Women's North American Championship in the last, number of months, it's that normally when it's defended on a PLE, it tends to produce what we call a banger. And I would absolutely say that this one is 100%, worthy of that moniker. This one was brilliant. It was absolutely fantastic. A really solid back and forth match between two women who I really seem to think brought the best out of each other. It was incredible. It was my match of the night as well. I'll put that out here, right now. There were some other good matches on this card, but I think this one was just a slight notch above a couple of the other ones that we'll talk about later on. But yeah, this one was amazing. They both raised their game immensely. The intensity was high, especially in those late stages, which I'll talk about in a couple of moments. And both ladies just absolutely, spent each other as they just waged war upon the other ones. So yeah, it was a really great match. We had some really nice sequences, which led to a really good finish, in my opinion. Just made for a pretty epic finale. Obviously, we've seen Tatum Paxley come off the title picture recently, and she wasn't gonna leave it, without one last gasp to try and sort of get it back in her clutches again. And yeah, I think she's criminally underrated, and we're sort of like seeing the plaudits for Tatum Paxley because she's been so consistent on the PLE stage for such a long time now. Every single match that she's in seemingly is just very, very good. And Zaria as well, obviously, sort of playing second fiddle to Soruka, sort of seemingly herself, maybe overshadowed by that, coming into her own now, delivering such, great matches back to back. And they're just killing it. They really, really are. This division is special, and they're doing a really great job of keeping it flowing with each event that comes by. But yeah, the match had references to their build. Just worked really, really well, making for a really entertaining, back and forth match. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It was a spectacle to watch, to be honest. In terms of our finish, though, we do see Tatum Paxley and Zaria split into ringside, which is an ever-present scene of the evening, to be fair. Lots of matches do go to the outside of the ring, which is quite nice to see, sort of like adding depth and levels to the matches. And on the outside, we do see Tatum Paxley taking advantage of the situation, hitting a cemetery drive, and then rolling Zaria back into the ring and hitting another cemetery drive. So two back-to-back near enough within about, 20 seconds of each other. And that is what I would probably describe here as one of the great false finishes in NXT, to be fair, because I'm shocked at this point. I'm thinking there's no way that Zaria kicks out of this. Like that, this match is over. This is two cemetery drives. One of the finishing moves that has up until recently been very well protected, in absolute fairness to it. It doesn't get kicked out of too often. It's a rarity when it does happen. So for her to have hit it twice within about 20 seconds, one being on the outside, was obviously, his further impact on the move. I was thinking, you know what, there's no way this is going to be it, but it has to be, right? And Zaria kicks out of two. So yeah, it was a great near fall. False finish was perfect. And we then see Zaria going back on the offensive moments later. She's able to bounce back, and she hits a spear before landing an F5. And then we get a kick out from Tatum Paxley, which makes for another great moment. I think if they ended the match there, might have felt a little bit flat, but it wouldn't have took too much off of it. But the kick out was great from Tatum. We continue. Zaria just stays on the aggressive. She just beats down Tatum Paxley with a series of forearms as she's laying down on the canvas, and then she picks her back up, stomping her down onto the mat, and then going for an F5, and that would be the win here for Zaria to retain her Women's North American Championship. Not a surprising result. We both expected, Zaria to retain her title here. But in terms of the match quality that we got, it was superb. It was excellent. Really, really great back and forth match. And yeah, my match of the evening was sure. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Just excelled and just did a great job and, got me very much into this event early doors. The first match wasn't particularly great, but this one, yeah, we're back on the right track here. Nick, what do you think, though? How does this one compare to the recent matches we've seen between these two ladies? The sort of like North American Championship lineage going back, number of events. I feel like it's been very consistent. Do you agree with that? Does this sort of like continue with that sort of synopsis? And what do you think of this rendition of their match?
Yeah, I think both of these ladies obviously have really good chemistry, and it does feel like the NXT Women's North American title scene is always producing very quality matchups. This one, obviously, no exception. And you also compared this one to the opening contest, and I kind of did the same. I felt like this match is what the last match should have been in terms of intensity, in terms of bad blood. But for whatever reason, that first one just didn't do it. But this one hit that on all cylinders. So yeah, Zarya kicking out of the two cemetery drives. I believe there was a power bomb on the side of the ring as well right before that. So for Zarya to kick out of that, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, I similar to you, I was sitting there thinking, wow, they're going to give the title back to Tatum based on all of that. And then for her to kick out of that, that was a tremendous decision. Tatum kicking out of an F5 as well, similarly. So the walk away here for me was this was a ton of fun. These two continue to show off their chemistry in the ring and felt like, for what felt like kind of a last minute thrown together matchup, yes, Tatum had lost her title to Zarya, but it was very much like she popped up in the crowd and then, okay, we're going to do the match. So it wasn't a ton behind this, but still, they picked right where they left off. They made Tatum look quite strong here, but they made Zarya look like an absolute beast. For her to kick out of those three moves in a row, yeah, it's incredible. And good on them because I was worried. Like I said, I thought that was the end of her reign already. So I thought that was a really terrible decision. So I'm glad they didn't do that. Yeah, they made Zarya look incredible, and continuing her momentum that she has after beating Soul. So this is a great path for Zarya so far, and I can't wait to see where this reign does escalate to. And good luck to whoever Zarya faces next. I also give this one a 9 out of 10. Next match of the evening has Shiloh Hill going up against Tristan Angels. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was quite looking forward to this matchup. A couple of big opportunities here for these two men on the NXT PLE stage. Tristan Angel's making his debut in a PLE as well, which was great to see for him personally. I actually went into this one. I think you did as well, Nick, if I'm not wrong. Thinking that probably Tristan Angels was the better choice here to get a win because obviously things have been very much against him recently, and this would be a nice opportunity for him to sort of like get that momentum back and sort of like try and trade off a little bit with Shiloh Hill in the reverse. But I'll explain what happens in this matchup and why that didn't quite take place. And you know what? I'm actually not too bothered by that decision to go against it either. So this one's a pretty fun match. I'll describe it as fun because it was quite entertaining in parts. And I think Charlotte Hill especially brings that. We obviously see Tristan Angels, that very heelish attitude that he brings, very cocky, cocksure, typical nonchalant British guy that we've seen, quite similarly over the years in wrestling. But he does it in a way that I think is quite captivating. And Shiloh Hill is able to sort of like offer a completely different dynamic to that. The two just blend really well in this match together. And it's a really nice coming together of two completely contrasting personalities. And their build that's gone into this one as well just works really nicely because it does feel like, both men have quite a personal vendetta towards each other, especially Tristan towards Shiloh Hill, very much like a jealous, sort of envious attitude here that he possesses. And that plays into the match really, really well. Like I say, it's quite fun. It's quite crazy as well in part, which I'll explain why in a minute. But yeah, it just offers a lot to really enjoy. It's a competitive match as well, goes back and forth. And I feel like, Charlo had to go to the well in order to get a 1-2-3 in this matchup. It wasn't easy for him. It was full of animosity, had that personal feel, and just a solid display of offense from both men. So there's a part of this matchup that I particularly was like kind of intrigued by, I guess you could say. And the action spills sort of like similar to what's been happening in the build. This goes back to NXT on Tuesday when Tristan was in his Evolve Championship matchup against Aaron Rourke. And he gets dragged underneath the ring, assumingly by Shiloh Hill. We didn't actually get confirmation of that, but everyone pretty much expects and knows that it was him. And yeah, he gets dragged underneath again here during the matchup. And as he does so, the camera actually pans to underneath the ring, and Tristan's just sort of like crawling under the ring. A mobile phone starts going off from underneath, and it's just like lit up in there. So Tristan goes to answer it. I couldn't exactly hear what it was making. I'd love to hear if you can sort of make it out, Nick, and sort of like get some clarity here. But I think it says something is coming, and I couldn't quite figure out what that first word was. But regardless, the warnings were there. Tristan was obviously freaked out by it, and as soon as that sort of like came to fruition, we then see Shiloh Hill appearing from behind him, locking in like a sleeper hold. He's got a mask on as well. It's a very creepy, eerie vibe, which is pretty cool. Nice little bit of depth added to the matchup here. And we do see Tristan Angel escaping it sort of relatively quickly. There's like a weapon underneath there, which he uses to smash against Shiloh Hill's face. I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know how much the referee is aware of this. I'm assuming, he can't see any of it, has no idea what's happening. So the action goes back to the outside of the ring, where Tristan escapes from Shiloh. And as he gets out of the ring, sort of like composing himself, trying to dust himself off, we then see Shiloh appear from directly behind Tristan Angels, and he just goes back on the offense there. So it's just a really fun spot. I don't know why, it just really intrigues me. I quite liked it. Towards the late stages as well, we do see Shiloh running up some steel steps at ringside, which Angels actually placed there himself earlier in the contest. And as he runs up those steps, Shiloh, he goes for a spear and lands it on Tristan. We then see a couple of minutes later a code breaker from Tristan Angels, and that gets a 2 count from Shiloh Hill. Shiloh recovers, they getting a little bit back and forth before Shiloh heads up to the second rope and lands what I'm calling basically a whisper to the beast is what his move is called, but sort of like a avalanche style move to like jumps off the second rope to hit that neck breaker, and that would be the 1-2-3 here for Shiloh Hill. But to be fair, I wasn't expecting anything crazy good in this match, but we got a pretty solid one-on-one matchup. So I'm quite happy with what we got here. Probably exceeded my expectations. Not that I wasn't expecting quality from these two men, but because didn't think they'd be given the time that they were actually given. It was quite a long match, and it was more than I thought they would have. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with this one, and I thought it was pretty good. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I liked it. Thought it was great, and had so many different dynamics involved, which made it really, really interesting. What do you think, though, Nick? Do you sort of like share a similar opinion here? What did you make of all the sort of like antics in the middle of the matchup? How did that fare out for you? And what about the win here for Shiloh Hill over Tristan Angels?
Yeah, as you mentioned, both kind of assuming that Tristan would kind of get a mark in the win column. Unfortunately, that was not the case. However, it didn't feel like it was a huge loss in momentum for him. Yes, Shiloh won the match, and that's the biggest weight. But in terms of just back and forth, it was very evenly matched for both guys here. Shiloh's finisher, even kind of coming out of nowhere, and it felt like it could have just as easily gone the other way. Tristan had hit his finisher there. Obviously, it would have been the end of it as well. So, yeah, definitely surpassed my expectations as well. I have pretty high hopes for both of these guys. I think both of them bring something unique to currently we don't have anyone else like either of these guys, but especially Shiloh. Very unique spots as you've already hit on. Several moments I don't think I've ever seen, especially like the camera under the ring answering a phone. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. If I have, it didn't ring a bell. So yeah, I think Charlotte will probably make a career out of those interesting moments, interesting, unique moments. Definitely in his play style, and I think in terms of like in ring, obviously he's very quality in ring as well. So I think Charlotte has a lot of potential, but I think Tristan is just has a certain kind of character to him as well that I think is very unique and could work quite well. I think his in ring persona as well is very good. So, yeah, in terms of the rating for the match, yeah, it did surpass my expectations. However, they were quite low. I kind of figured this would be kind of a break, especially coming off the last match, I figured this would be a shorter match just to kind of help carry us into the next one. But yeah, it definitely surpassed my expectations. Didn't quite give it a high rating as you. I gave it a 7 out of 10. But yeah, definitely better than what I thought it would be. Just figured Tristan would probably get a win. So I think if they're going to continue this rivalry, though, he probably does need to get some sort of momentum back in his favor. Because for now, as you alluded to as well, it does. I feel like it's all been all Shiloh. So gave this one a 7 out of 10. Next match of the evening has Arianna Grace going up against Wren Sinclair for the WWE Women's Speed Championship. What'd you make of this one, KP?
Yeah, I've been quite vocal, in the history of doing this, that speed matches aren't exactly my favorite. I wouldn't say this one is up there with one of my favorites either. It's an okay matchup. It's not the worst I've seen in terms of speed contests, but there are some things I would like to go into here, which is a perfect opportunity to go through my mindset. But it's a decent enough match, pretty much as expected. I guess you could say that's not a bad thing, I suppose. I thought, in fairness, my main positive here is that Arianna Grace, I was quite impressed with what I saw from her, to be fair. It's a very quick paced match, right? So we don't get to see too much from each competitor during these contests. But what I did see from our Arianna Grace was I saw a lot of improvement from probably her last NXT PLE match, whenever that would have been. I don't exactly know when that was, but it's felt like it's been a while. But regardless of the fact, though, I thought she actually was pretty solid in there with Wren Sinclair, who is coming into her own as well. So yeah, they put on a decent match. I'm not going to complain about that. It was quite high pace, obviously, as you would expect from a speed contest. And then we do see a little bit of interference with Charlie Dempsey getting involved, which is the only real other thing to mention in terms of stuff that actually needs to be noted here in terms of bell to bell capacity. But yeah, we see the whole of Birthright on the outside, but only Charlie Dempsey gets involved, which I found quite interesting. I'm not sure why they chose to only have one of the guys to be, getting involved and, trying to play favorites here towards Arianna Grace, fellow member of Birthright. I thought maybe Channing Lorenzo would have at least done a little bit more, considering, they are literally betrothed. So, yeah, I don't know. That was a bit of a weird call for that. But obviously, there is that Charlie Dempsey, Wren Sinclair history, so that does play into it, which makes logical sense. But I thought maybe Channing could have also got involved as a minimum, at least, as well. The way that Wren wins this matchup, I feel like she did it quite comfortably and easily. She wasn't particularly challenged too much. And when you've got people on the outside that they're supporting, obviously they're a heel faction as well. You do expect that sort of, level of adversity that the face has to go through. And to only really have Charlie Dempsey there as the main obstacle, I thought, yeah, it was just a strange decision. But more into that, we do see Wren rolling in the contest. Charlie Dempsey gets onto the apron, looks to distract Sinclair, and then Charlie gets knocked to ringside before going over to Arianna Grace. There's Wren. Arianna takes advantage, rolls up Wren Sinclair, but only gets a 2 count. That's how she won the semi-final match against Izzy Dame on NXT this Tuesday. But obviously Wren Sinclair one step ahead. Wren spins Arianna around several times, getting into the flow of the late stages. And then we do see her send Arianna crashing onto the canvas and locking in her final rent submission, which is like a cattle mutilation style move. And that'll be the one, or that'll be the submission victory here for Wren Sinclair, with Arianna tapping almost immediately. So yeah, it did feel a little too easy, I thought. I gave it a 6 out of 10. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those matches that I don't tend to look too fondly on, and this is another rendition of that. So yeah, I don't know. These speed matches don't particularly do it for me. But like when there's also a lack of logic in there as well, and just seemingly is a little bit too simplistic, that's when I'm going to get even more sort of like vocal about this. But yeah, what did you think, Nick? Am I being too critical here? I know you've been sort of like swaying between enjoying and maybe not enjoying speed matches recently, but where does this sort of sit on your scale?
Yeah, you're kind of weighing down my opinion of speed matches. In all seriousness, like eventually, I think. Well, it started out at a point where I enjoyed them quite a bit, and then the more you kind of provided your reason for not liking them, it kind of weighed on my judgment. But I would disagree with you a little bit. I think this match was honestly one of the better women's speed matches I think that I can recall. Of course, the championship matches had that 2 additional minutes, so that definitely helps. But then, yeah, the big thing for me was the fact that Ren won being outnumbered like that, which kind of is a double-edged sword. The one side of it being, uh, of course, that makes Wren look stronger, and I feel like it did. She did look pretty strong here. But then the fact that only one of them, in that Charlie was, interfering, and not her significant other, who was right there as well. So that was kind of strange. I would agree with that. But I also get WWE's side of it in terms of a booking decision because you only have 5 minutes. So it comes with the territory, I suppose. But yeah, I'm just taking it as Ren was just booked that strongly, and I think both women did look good here, as you mentioned as well. Arianna looked good as well. Anytime I've seen her, I feel like she's been impressive. But Ren making strides of her own. So, and I love the submission, the final wrench. I thought that was a very unique finisher from her, finisher submission, if you will. I like that. I really don't have any issues with it. And like I said, I think this is one of the better women's speed matches I've seen in a while. So 6.5 out of 10, so just a smidge above yours. Next match of the evening has Saquon Shugars going up against Dion Lennox. Gave you a lot of momentum here for Saquon, at least it felt like. I think we both kind of assumed that he would win this just because it just made sense. Obviously, that's the decision they went, but there's another thing in here similar to the last match. Didn't quite make enough sense, at least to me. So curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
This one was a pretty tough one to predict. Yeah, I was sort of umming and ahhing between the two men here. I think you can make a credible argument for both guys in terms of like who needed a win and like who could have really done with one more than the other. Um, I feel like Dark State been a bit of a joke recently, and that's not to say that I disagree with the build. We've had Saquon Shugars obviously breaking out from the group and bringing the fight to all three men, which is a valiant effort from the face, which is completely fair and understandable. Then you go into the matchup here, at NXT's Great American Bash, one-on-one Saquon Shugars and Dion Lennox, and it's a bit of a situation where Dion has had nothing going for him of recent. It's all been sort of like just dissipating out for him. Bad luck after bad luck after bad luck for the whole Dark State group. And I thought this was a great opportunity here to have Dion get a win and then sort of like try and like hold that momentum of Saquon for a moment. And then they can obviously build up from that one, going forward. They can have that sort of like, play out into another match going forward. But Saquon Shugars here just completely keeps that momentum rolling and, scores a win here over Dion Lennox. And it does seem like Dark State are just down on their luck at the moment, which is just, I guess, once you're on your bad luck, you can't really shake it off so easily. So I'm not going to complain about that. What I will complain about is the finish. The finish for this match was absolutely poor. And I think I don't know if it was a botch per se, but like, seemingly there was just very little contact. I don't know if it was meant to be that way, but it almost felt like Dion just falls. Like he just falls to the canvas. Like I think Vic Joseph tried to cover it up, saying like his body gave out or something like that. Maybe after like the harshness of this contest up until this point. But like I feel like that wasn't really meant to be that way because Saquon does go for a move and he just misses it. It doesn't hit at all, and Dion has to just fall to the canvas. And I watched this a couple of times back just to see if I missed something. I really didn't. I really did not miss a damn thing. So it was weird that sort of took place as it was. And then the finish afterwards is one splash, and I'm just like, I'm watching this, like, is that it? Damn, that's really it. Okay. So the finish aside, the matchup was kind of fun. It was good. It was it was aggressive. Both men just going at it, having a back and forth match, which is what you want to see between two guys who've got a lot of history together in very recent months. And yeah, it made for what it needed to be, but it's just because it led to that really flat, poor finish. I don't know. It just seemingly was a bit of a dull ending, which is a damn shame because I was quite enjoying it. Like I say, it was very heavy hitting between both men. Sugars absorbs so much offense, by the way, in terms of those late stages. He gets dropped on the top turnbuckle, sort of like the post which attaches the metal pipe that attaches the ring post to the turnbuckle, gets dropped on there, crashes to ringside, gets hit with an absolutely hellacious power slam in the ring as well. And Dion then follows up on that afterwards after the kick out of two, and then keeps on going for a little bit longer. And that's when Saquon turns things around, goes into his comeback sequence, and then obviously delivers that poor finish. But like I said, like for him to absorb so much punishment, and then for Dion to be pretty much not hit by the action, I don't know. That was a bit of a sour spot for me, but like I say, I think I have more positive to say about this one. It's just the fact that it led to such an atrocious finish is the slight issue that I do have. Um, but yeah, I thought this one was okay. It was good. Post match, we do have Dark State swarm the ring. Saquon Shugars obviously, just getting a win there, and yeah, the guys aren't going to be happy with that. So they go into there, they take him out with a series of strikes or whatever, laying him down on the mat, and then we do see Dion Lennox going over to the baseball bat, which Shugars took to the ring with him, sort of like a prop accessory, whatever, when he was making his entrance. And he grabs the baseball bat and he absolutely just lays out Saquon Shugars with his own baseball bat. And that would be Dark State's standing tall at the end of this matchup and segment, if you want to put it that way. But yeah, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Like I say, I like the match content. It's just it got to a point where I was like, right, well, that's just sort of soured the mood on this one. So yeah, it probably would have been a little bit higher, but just because of the really terrible finish, I had to dock it down a little bit at least. But yeah, Nick, what did you think? Like, what did you make of that finish? Can you sort of like get some clarity on there for me? Because I don't know if I missed something, but I don't think I did. It seemingly did just look like Dion just fell, and one splash later, a reverse splash as well. By the way, I guess it's kind of a cool move. But yeah, I don't know. What did you think of the whole matchup and the finish and Dark State standing tall at the end of it all?
Yeah, unfortunately, Dark State has really taken a big hit. You make a point to where one guy took them all out, which you can make of that what you will. Obviously, he has a lot of reason to do so, and is very personally at that vendetta. So I don't really have an issue with that. But the finish post match actually is what really I had the biggest issue with. In terms of the match itself, it felt like this one was very personal, as you alluded to, and rightfully so. Saquon took an absolute beating here. Interesting to have Saquon uh, get the win and then in that very sudden way. And then right after, the members of Dark State are, all of a sudden healthy. They take off the braces and whatnot, and they immediately attack Saquon after the match, with that baseball bat. So, and then all of a sudden Dion's right back up. So yeah, the finish is definitely a bit of a head scratcher. And if they are healthy, I get they wanted to make the moment afterwards, but if they are healthy, why would they not kind of interfere? Or, which is crazy, I know, hearing me ask for an interference, but if that's the angle they're going to go, why would they let Dion lose the match like that? So it doesn't make a ton of sense. If it's just for the moment, then don't have them be there at all. I think just have Saquon beat Dion the way it is. So yeah, basically from the finish of the match to the post match, it felt like that was a big decline for me, because everything leading up to that finish was really good and felt like it was a really good contest. But I do have to dock it a bit for that finish, and maybe we'll get. I honestly, I don't know how they're going to fix that. Dark State just kind of feels silly for it, and as you alluded to, it feels like their stock has dropped quite a bit. So I don't really know. I was sitting here thinking in the prediction, I don't know how Saquon wins. In the long run, because he's going to be outnumbered always. So somehow they made it work here. I think it makes Dark State look pretty dumb, honestly. So a good match here, and I'm happy that Saquon got the win, because that felt like the only way to go. But just the decisions behind how they went about it just didn't make a ton of sense. All that being said, a lot of negative points, but still gave it a 7 out of 10. Just felt like it could have been much better with a better finish. With that, let's go ahead and get into the next contest of the evening, which has Tavion Heights going up against Myles Borne for the NXT North American Championship. I think we both had high hopes for this one. KP, did it live up to yours?
Yeah, I mentioned this one as potentially being like the sleeper match for the event, and I think both these guys possess a lot of quality. They've got a lot of history together, and I think when it comes down to one-on-one action, they're very 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 technically gifted guys, and I think they do sort of display that in this matchup. As to whether it lived up to my expectations and sort of what I thought it could really happen between these two men, I would say it probably hit the minimum side of that. Yeah, I don't think it was absolutely incredible or anything. It wasn't in my conversation for like match of the evening, but it was pretty damn good as well. Like I think it was pretty consistent across the board. I love the fact that both men sort of like bring their history with each other into this matchup, and they show respect at the beginning of the contest and at the very end as well. But then they also sort of like they display their chemistry and their history together in the ring in the matchup by just sort of like showing how well they know each other. There are moments where they sort of like transition against each other's moves really, really nicely. There's a lot of fluid, solid, transitions here in this contest. And then also as well, we see each other anticipating the other guy's move that's coming up next, and they just do it really, really well. Like, it doesn't seem like overly done. It seems to be appropriately done here and there when necessary, and it sort of like adds to a nice little dynamic of the contest. So yeah, I thought this one was pretty good. It could have maybe been a touch better than maybe what they delivered here, but in terms of what I expected, I think they did a good job of showcasing what they can really do. They went into their arsenals really nicely, and the finish was great. I obviously mentioned how much I showed displeasure to the finish in the last match. This one was really, really good because it was out of nothing. You mentioned in the Shiloh Hill and Tristan Angels matchup, this has a very similar vibe to it. Almost seemingly was like, oh, that's the finish. Oh, damn, that is the finish. And here we go, 1, 2, 3. So yeah, that comes in way of Heights having a handle on the offense in the late stages. Looks to put Myles away. He lifts him up on his shoulders into like a fireman's carry position. And then as Heights goes to drop Borne, he actually literally just drops him off of his shoulders. Myles then quickly transitions into a Borne again, which is obviously that, as we've seen in the past, that zigzag star maneuver. Lands it on Tavion Heights, almost seemingly out of absolutely nothing. It's really, really cleanly done. And that'll be the 1, 2, 3 for Myles Borne to win this matchup. So yeah, I think both men just putting on a smart approach to this contest. It just plays out really nicely. It's logical. Every single part of this match is logical in the sense of the build being correct, the history between the two men, and the approach they should have towards each other in this match. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. Is it an absolutely exceptional contest? No, it's not. But it's still a very good and solid one, and one that I did very much enjoy. So yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was pretty damn good. But yeah, I think it was just enough to be in that conversation as potentially, maybe one of the sleeper matches of the evening. But I think there were a couple of matches that were a little bit better as a minimum. What do you think, though, Nick? How did these two do for you? Do you think it sort of like met your expectations? And what about the sort of like general dynamic between the two men?
Yeah, this was a very nice blend of personal but also technical. Obviously, both these men very technical in the ring, and so really was a very good match. I think maybe speaking on my behalf, and sounds like maybe yours as well. It sounds like maybe our expectations were maybe a smidge too high. It also sounds like that, or at least in my head, it felt like this was probably going to be not the first or not the last match. So maybe they did hold back a bit, thinking maybe there will be another match. You always have that with WWE's a booking, so that is always a potential as well. But not a bad match at all. Just felt like maybe it didn't quite live up to what it could. But both these guys look good here. They both look pretty strong. For whatever reason, yeah, just didn't quite live up to those expectations we had set out there for them. But a good win here for Myles, and I don't think I just don't see Tavion staying away. Probably one of his better matches I've seen from him, and Myles just continues to impress me in the ring as well. So I wouldn't be mad if we get another match from these guys, and maybe it'll be just a smidge better. But even still, with all that being said, a 7.5 out of 10 for me. So make of that what you will. With that, let's go ahead and get into the main event of the evening, which I think kind of spoiled the ending, at least for me. You had the men's side lead off, and then you had the women's, assumingly then be the main event. So I think it kind of spoiled it a bit for me. But regardless, I don't think it took away from the match that much. KP, did you kind of have the same thought process as well when you saw the opening contest and then assuming this would be the main event? And also, what did you make of this finally, Kendal Grey getting her opportunity? What did you make of it all?
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. And even what you've already sort of like opinionated so far off the back of that as well. The championship match at the start of the night did sort of, give this one away to me as me be thinking, oh, well, if the women's match is going to be the main event, surely that does mean that, Kendal Gray's going to get the job done here. But did that stop me from enjoying it any more than I could have done? No, I don't think so. I don't think it really impacted my enjoyment levels of this one whatsoever. I still had a great time watching it. When you got these two ladies in the ring together, we saw their match before Stand and Deliver. That was going obviously number one contenders match to face JC Jane at the time, and that was a pretty solid matchup as well. One-on-one match did very well on that appearance there. taken into this one, I expected big things, and I think we got those big things in this match because you mentioned in the previous contest the Myles, Borne, and Tavion Heights, two technically, gifted wrestlers who, can sort of like, trade back and forth and produce a really solid transitional contest. Well, if we saw that in the previous matchup, how do we describe this one then? Because this one was absolutely phenomenal in terms of a technical offensive display. It was just two ladies just absolutely transitioning flawlessly and smoothly throughout basically the entire contest. And it makes for a really, really solid match for those of us that are wrestling purists. And I know that we both do sort of like describe ourselves as those type of fans. We'd love to see that type of grappling and wrestling offense in the ring. And I feel like this one was basically perfect for the both of us. And I'm loving to hear your thoughts on that particular aspect in a moment when obviously you take the reins. But yeah, I had a great time watching this. Why wouldn't I, right? It was just a great clinical, technical wrestling display. Kendal and Lola, they work really well together, don't they? They just create a dynamic that's a pleasure to watch, just going back and forth, just basically just seemingly just matching each other in terms of graps, in terms of striking ability, kind of maybe sort of favoring Lola Vice, but Kendal has that in her game as well. We see that in this matchup as well from time to time, bits and bobs here and there. These are just two very similar wrestlers in terms of their general abilities. I think I do give a slight edge to Kendal Grey, and in this matchup, I guess you can say that is exactly what is the case here. But yeah, the match essentially 100% back and forth, and I don't know many matches that are like this. You get a bit of a back and forth for like a good, I don't know, first half of the match, and then, normally somebody takes full control, and then you get a little bit of that comeback in the later stages for the other person. That isn't really like that in this match, though. It's basically just tilting those scales back and forth from start to finish, seemingly. There's no real moment in the match where one person is in control for probably more than about a minute, and that is quite impressive, to be fair. But it makes for a really nice flow, and it makes for a great crowning moment for Kendal Grey as well, who does get the win in this contest and becomes the new NXT Women's Champion. That comes in way of Kendal avoiding a spinning back fist for the second time in the matchup, by the way. Lola did hit one earlier on. Sort of bounces Kendal off the rope. She then sort of transitions into a really big spinning elbow. And that sort of like takes out both ladies. There's a cover afterwards, and they kick out of each other at two. But going back to the finish, yeah, the second back fist this time misses from Lola Vice. Kendal Grey is able to head up to the springboard in the corner, and she lands a Shades of Grey, her second one of the contest after hitting one on the outside of the ring earlier on. And that would be the 1-2-3 here for Kendal Grey to pick up her very first NXT Women's Championship. But yeah, absolutely thoroughly deserved. She came out with a Kurt Angle get-up with the red hoodie, obviously donning the stars and the stripes there, more so the stars. But you go what I'm trying to say. It was just a great match, very, very enjoyable to watch, and just it was a pleasure to watch as well. Like I watched this one, I could have watched another 15-20 minutes of this one quite easily and comfortably. It was just smooth, transitionally smooth, and just absolutely like butter watching the whole damn thing. Loved it. I gave it an 8.5. It wasn't my favorite match of the evening. I do think Zaria and Tatum did just slightly go that extra level with their match, but in terms of just wrestling quality, this one is by far the best of the evening. But I do think the other match had a little bit more across the board, which is why I've given that one a higher rating. But yeah, great match, and what a contest, and what a win for Kendal Grey. Nick, what did you think of this one? How much did you enjoy it? I know we're both wrestling purists. That's what we describe ourselves as. Did you feel like it really hit that description? And what about Kendal Grey's crowning moment?
Yeah, it is definitely toe to toe with Zaria and Tatum as match of the night. I'll get into which one I give the kind of the upper hand. First of all, this you mentioned Lola's striking abilities, and I think it's a good thing, but sometimes it probably does get redundant on the listener side. But my notes were very similar to you in that, Lola has that striking ability, and that's kind of her forte. But then you have Kendal here who exceeds, you could argue, just as much as Lola. And so that felt like that was kind of as if it wasn't obvious in the placement on the card, it felt like that was kind of okay, this is that moment that we realize that Lola's big advantage in most other matches. Kendal can do the exact same and can match her strike for strike. So it felt like that was kind of the elephant in the room of, okay, you're in trouble now because the one advantage you have over all the other women, Kendal you don't really have that advantage over her. So I thought that was kind of a great way to do it. Whether they did that intentionally or not, it felt like that was kind of the story being told here. So with that being said, probably one of, if not the best Lola match I think I've seen. She's made obviously big improvements as well. I think both of us, she's kind of grown on both of us, but this is definitely one of the better, if not best, ones I've seen from her. And yeah, so just the issue of Lola's striking no longer being able to be that big advantage, um, you know. I think that's just a testament to how good Kendal Gray is. I'm trying not to use this match as a soapbox to go off about Kendal, but unfortunately, that is I think probably what this is going to be perceived as because Kendal not only has that striking ability, but she seemingly has everything else as well. And so, I we were sitting here thinking it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when Kendal got that opportunity. That has been answered obviously here tonight. Kendal put it on, I would argue, one of her better, if not her best performances as well. And so you couple those two together here in the main event of Great American Bash. I thought it all just all played out really well, and I actually am going to give the slight edge to this match. Yeah, as you mentioned, just really sound matchup and great performances from both ladies here to really steal the show. I gave this one a 9.5 out of 10. Just missing that little bit to kind of put it over the edge. Obviously, more of a false finish. You could definitely give that nod to the Zaria matchup, but this one just felt like it was very, very evenly matched throughout. And I think if it was anyone else outside of Kendal, I would have probably not thought that was going to be the match before it was. But we just knew Kendal was going to get her time, and they were delaying the inevitable. So I'm glad they finally did decide to do that. Unfortunately, Lola just kind of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I think she's made immense improvements as well. So great match and great main event. Really a great way to end a really quality show. But with that, KP, NXT's Great American Bash, obviously, we always have high hopes for these NXT PLEs. Did it live up to that hype that we kind of presented in the predictions? What were your highlights, lowlights, everything in between? And we'll get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, there's always a lot of pressure because I think, we are both very much, aware of the quality that NXT PLEs do possess. And I think when it comes to this particular one, NXT's Great American Bash, I think this one did live up to expectations. I think, it was pretty damn solid from start to finish. We had some really great matches throughout the course of the card. Obviously, especially the likes of the main event, which is Kendal Gray and Lola Vice. I also thought that Myles, Borne, and Tavion Heights had a really good back and forth match, as well as Tristan Angels and Shiloh Hill. But obviously, my match of the evening going to Zaria and Tatum Paxley. I think like those four matches being 8 and up in out of 10 for me, I think just showcases the general depth and quality over the course of the show. I know you didn't quite agree with the Shiloh Hill one especially, but I think just looking at what NXT can deliver on the PLE stage, this was a 7 match card, by the way, and just being able to have a 3 hour event where you got 7 matches. You haven't got really a lot of bits in between. Obviously, you had a speed match. Sure, that wasn't very long. That was 5 minutes. But 6 matches plus that, I still think that's more than we get on an average main roster PLE in terms of like in-ring content. There didn't really seem to be too much in between. Like it was obviously a little bit of a break for your commercials or whatever. Which I guess that's the way that we live now. We can't really get away from that. But it didn't feel like outside of that there was too much waiting in between those matches. So we were able to really get down into it. That's why we got the 7 matches altogether, which produced a couple of really extraordinarily great matches. So yeah, for me personally, I loved it. Had a great time watching this one. And just a really solid show from start to finish. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. That's an average of all of my matches put together. I gave it like a 7.6 something. So I tend to round up or down to the closest 0.5 or whole number. But yeah, it's a great show just from start to finish. And what about those couple of women's matches especially? Absolutely top tier for sure. Nick, what did you think though? NXT Great American Bash, did it live up to your expectations and your highs and lows of the evening?
Yeah, I would say it about lived up to exactly what I thought it would put out. You know, like you said, I was a bit lower on some of the matches and I was a bit higher. So funny enough, my overall rating does end up being the exact same as yours, a 7.5. So in terms of highlights, lowlights, obviously the Kendal Gray Lola Vice match and the Zaria Tatum Paxley match being the two highlights of the evening. You mentioned the commercials as well. I feel like the only match that really was affected by those commercials was the Naraku and Tony D match. Felt like it was kind of pretty sudden. And so I felt like that definitely, and it was obviously a very heavy momentum moment for Tony D when they went to that first commercial break. So I felt like that was the only match that really was affected by it. But another thing I wanted to mention was the commentators were constantly saying throughout the evening, maybe not constantly, but they said it a few times that the main roster had taken a lot of the talent, the big talent from NXT, and obviously that's just kind of the nature of it. And so I think a lot of times we're sitting here worried, like, well, how will NXT fare? I think this is just a proof, and this is a testament to the machine still working because all of the matchups, and they alluded to the future of NXT as the champions, and obviously that being highlighted by the main event and Kendal Gray finally getting that. I think NXT is just fine. I think all the matches we saw here tonight shows that the future of NXT is still very, very bright. So overall, a really good PLE. So would love to hear from you in the comments below. What did you make of this event? What were your highlights, lowlights? We'd love to hear from you. If you like what we're putting out here, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe as well. But overall, a very busy wrestling weekend, and it doesn't stop from here. Obviously, we'll have the Raw recap here later on tonight. But very busy weekend, and honestly, a really fun weekend. And when you have two PLEs, sometimes you worry one won't live up to the hype, and maybe one will be a disappointment. But honestly, they both, I would say, at least met and or exceeded expectations. So you love to see that. It doesn't happen a ton sometimes with WWE. So with that, we'll hear from you guys soon. Until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.